So there's a traveling salesman, and he's driving along, checks into his hotel. It's about 7 o'clock at night. He decides, you know what? I want a steak. Hankering for a steak. He's in this small town, drives around, can't find anything, goes to the next small town, can't find anything, goes to the next place, and he sees this one sign that just says steak on it. And the place is packed. It's got to be good. So he pulls in, goes inside, and he looks up and he sees all these wires hanging down with stakes attached to them, raw stakes attached to them at different lengths, different heights. It's a little weird, unsanitary maybe perhaps, okay? So he goes up to the hostess and he says, one person, by the way, it's the first time I've ever been here. What's with the stakes hanging from the ceiling? She goes, oh, sir, that's a tradition that we've had for many years. What we do is if you choose which steak you want, and if you jump up and hit it with any part of your hand, your meal is entirely free. No charge. But if you jump and miss, you have to pay for everybody's meal in the whole restaurant. Would you like to try this? And he sits there and thinks a little bit, and he goes, nah, the stakes are too high. Pam, I love your laugh. Anyway, so I love food, as you can probably tell. I love food. I even like fast food. Rally's had a commercial one time that said, fast foodies get it. I get it. I love food. Wendy's Baconators, oh, those are so amazing. I even like McDonald's every now and again, so there's something wrong with me. Especially like fast food breakfast. I don't know why. I do. Hardee's sausage, egg, and cheese biscuit. They're amazing, okay? I love sit-down restaurants. Cracker Barrel, good home cooking meal. Texas Roadhouse, El Camino, Greek's Pizza Buffet. I love food. Snacks. I love cashews, granola bars, cookies. Yeah, you can tell why I look the way I do. But my favorite is home-cooked food. My mom used to make this minute steak that she'd bread with flour and fry it. Homemade mashed potatoes. Man, it was amazing. My wife makes this thing where she bakes chicken and red potatoes and green beans and Italian dressing and bakes it for about half hour. Oh, it's so amazing. Everybody still here? Haven't gone to lunch or breakfast yet, have we? Now, see, that's what we're talking about. Whenever we're praying, give us this day our daily bread. I know people sometimes might think, well, is that spiritual because we do communion and bread and everything? No, it's a very tangible substance that we are asking for. Jesus teaches us, actually, no, he doesn't really teach us to ask for our daily bread. If you notice, it says, give us this day our daily bread. It doesn't say, oh, please, God, will you if you can. It's give us. It's actually a demand. Isn't that a little weird? We're actually demanding from God, give us this day our daily bread. Kind of makes you want to take a step back from that prayer and go, maybe I should pray that a little differently. Maybe not, okay? It's a little weird. Anyway, so we're talking about physical substance, food, okay? And that kind of leads us to our scripture. And the one thing I want you guys to know is this is the only miracle from Jesus that's in all four Gospels. It's in every one. It's in Matthew 14, Luke 9, John 9, and of course, John 6 and Mark 6. Sorry, I misquoted myself. And there's very subtle differences between all of them. There's not a lot of differences. The only one I really could pick out is in John. It says there was a small boy who had the food, the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes. Every other one just said that that's what they had. So there's not very many differences between these 4 different accounts of the same thing, which I find kind of amazing, honestly. But I think there's 5 things that we need to kind of pay attention to what's going on in this story about feeding these 5,000 men. Which kind of, if you realize it says 5,000 men, not 5,000 people. Men. So let's say half of them are married, so that's another 2,500 people. And then if those each have 2 kids, that's another 5,000. So that's like 12,500 people. And that's a low guess. I mean, because back then they had a lot of kids. So, but here's the 5 things I think we need to notice, okay? The disciples noticed there was a need. They noticed these people were going to get hungry. Maybe they were hungry themselves. Maybe they realized their stomachs were growling and go, we need to get rid of these people so we can go to Cracker Barrel and eat breakfast, okay? Although I don't think there was a Cracker Barrel back then, okay? They noticed that need. The second part is kind of interesting. They wanted the people to take care of themselves. They wanted them to leave, to go buy their own food and take care of it themselves. And I hate to say this, but it kind of reminded me of that statement I've heard some people make, and I don't think I've ever heard anybody in here make this, but why can't they just get a job and support themselves? That made me think of that statement. And if I'm perfectly honest, I have said that before. I have. So we notice a need, and we want the people to take care of it themselves. Jesus tells them, feed them. You do it. Why not? Right? And then they want to buy their way out of it. They want to go, that's almost a year's wage. Well, I can't afford that. Think of it this way. Let's see here. Most college basketball stadiums hold probably pretty close to the amount of people we're talking about, give or take, okay? So just imagine sitting there and there's no concessions, okay? John's thinking, man, I'm grumpy, okay? There's no concessions. And then somebody says, why don't you go buy them all food? That's basically what Jesus is telling the disciples, okay? Well, and then Jesus gives them the last bit of this 5th thing that I want you guys to grasp is Jesus tells them he wants them to use what they have, and they do. And that's kind of the point of all this. I think that's the point of this story. That's what we want to focus on this morning. Now I have a thought. I thought of this week, and I want you to follow my thought path, okay? Disclaimer time. I am not saying that this passage is not a miracle. I am not saying that. But I want you to think about this. What if everybody who was there took the initiative from whoever gave the food to begin with and gave what they had? Instead of Jesus multiplying the food, maybe it just got multiplied on its own. Not saying that's what happened. I'm not saying it's not a miracle, just a thought. It's kind of an interesting thought a little bit. Kind of gives us something to think about. And it kind of makes you think of from Exodus, whenever the manna from heaven. You know, they prayed, asked God for food. They're in the desert for 40 years, or forest, or whichever version you read. And they could only collect the manna for one day. If they collected more, it would spoil. They were only allowed to collect for that single day. And I think that's what Jesus is speaking to the people about whenever he says, give us this day our daily bread. It would ring true to the Jews that he was speaking to back then. And they only took enough for one day. I'm going to go sideways on you a little bit. I have a question. Who here, watching TV late at night, you're kind of hungry a little bit, hankering for a snack, maybe want some ice cream or whatever. You go stand in front of the fridge or in front of the pantry or freezer or wherever else. You look in there and you think, man, nothing looks good. And you exclaim with just disgust, there is nothing to eat in this house. I know of 3 people sitting here that have done that. Maybe 4, okay? And the funny part about it is most of us have plenty to eat in our house. I know my pantry's full. I know my freezer's full. I know my fridge is full. But I'm probably going to go home today and go, that sounds good. Okay? And I'm not saying we need to go to the store every day and fill our daily bread. But we kind of look at this prayer and we kind of skip over it a little bit. We kind of go, give us our daily bread. Yay. Okay? I've got 10 cans of green beans in my pantry. He already has, you know. Some stuff to consider. I looked up, Googled, because everything on the internet's true. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, in the world there is roughly 3.9 billion tons of food produced every year. 3.9 billion tons of food. That is a lot of food. The kicker of all that is this. 1.3 billion tons of that food is wasted every year. That is enough to feed 20 million people. And just to put that in perspective, that would feed everybody in the state of Indiana for 3 years. Let that sink in a little bit. We waste that in the world every year. And we watch on TV and we got the little Ethiopian boys who are starving. Kind of makes you think a little bit. Let's bring this a little closer to home. According to the Indiana Recycling Coalition, 40% of edible food is wasted here in the U.S. every year. Now, as many of you guys know, I used to do campus life in the middle school. This isn't my notes. This just came to me. I used to do campus life in the middle schools in Jay County from 2010 to 2013. That's what brought me to Jay County, okay? And I was allowed to go in the lunchroom at West J and East J both and hang out with kids. It was amazing. I mean, you can't imagine me being the extrovert that I am and seeing that as amazing, can you? Okay? It was just awesome. Go up to a table, mess with some kids for a half hour. It was just build relationships. It was awesome. But you knew which kids didn't have food at home. You just knew it. You just tell. They were the ones that were extremely ecstatic about getting that lunch at school that most kids don't like. They were, and you could tell. So yes, I just gave you a whole bunch of statistics. A whole bunch of statistics about the world, about the U.S., but there's a need here, and there is. I think we as God's people, we as people who follow Jesus and people who believe in him with everything that we have, we shouldn't let that stand. Simple substance. Everybody should have that. The issue I think that we have is we want to do something, but it's too big. We don't know where to start. We don't. And I have some things, but I'll get there in just a minute. Whenever I think of this need, and I think of my, what I'm doing about it, it makes me think of another scripture that I almost had Alexa read over the feeding of the 5,000, almost. And it's in Matthew 25, and it's the scripture of the sheep and the goats. If you aren't familiar with this, let me kind of break it. I'm not going to read it, but let me break it down, okay? Jesus comes to glory, and he will separate his people, okay? He will separate them into sheeps on the right, sheeps. It's not right. Sheep on the right, and goats on the left. The sheep will come into his glory. The goats will go away from him. And they ask why. And he goes to the sheep and he goes, when I was hungry, you gave me some food. When I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. When I was a stranger, you reached out to me. When I was naked, you gave me clothes. When I was sick, you came to my side. When I was in prison, you visited me. They asked, when did we do this? And he goes, when you did it for the least of these, you did it for me. Now, the goats, they go away from him. Why? Because when I was hungry, you didn't feed me. When I was thirsty, you didn't give me something to drink. When I was a stranger, you didn't reach out to me. When I was naked, you didn't give me clothing. When I was sick, you left me alone. When I was in prison, you didn't visit me. When didn't we do this? When you didn't do it for the least of these. And I kind of feel like I'm preaching to the choir a little bit this morning because you guys are awesome about giving to stuff. You are. But that's the point of this. Give us this day our daily bread. It's not a singular. We're not asking, give me my daily bread. Give us our daily bread. It's a communal thing. It's our community. So, back to what we can do about it. We have two things here that we do for food every month. Food Pantry Sunday. It is next Sunday, by the way. Do we do anything about that? I'll be honest with you, I've never brought anything in for Food Pantry Sunday. Shame on me. And we have a Monday night meal. Do we help or provide food for that? I mean, and those are just two things, and that's just two things here in this church. There are other churches doing things. There are other community projects that need our help. I'm not saying that those are the end-all, be-all, but those are two very tangible things we can do to to help people get their daily bread. I grew up at Monroe United Methodist Church. And there's usually this little 4-year-old named Nathaniel running around causing havoc in the church. I love that kid. And the reason I love that kid is because I see me 36 years ago. Who's surprised? That's what I thought. Anyway, so I was a little bit older, and we did the Lord's Prayer every week, just like we do here. And me and one of my friends, we developed this game where we tried to say the entire Lord's Prayer without taking a breath. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name, the kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I didn't do it, okay? And the funny part about it is, and that's really dumb, okay? 10-year-old, Noel, can you see me doing that? Yeah, that's what I thought, okay? And the funny part about it is, we say that prayer every week, but do we really mean it? Do we really think about what we're saying? We've already talked about some of it. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Because that's the most important part of that prayer. Great is your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done here as it is in heaven. Because that part is the most important part. Then the next part is pretty important because he talks about it in all 4 Gospels. Give us this day our daily bread. This is not meant as a guilt trip. This whole message is not meant as a guilt trip. If God lays it on your heart to help, by all means help. If God lays it on your heart to help with building maintenance, I'm sure Sharon and Lee would love your help, okay? If God lays it on your heart to help with youth ministry, that would be awesome. That was a little bit of a plug there, just FYI. But if God lays it on your heart to help with daily bread, I ask that you do it. Because here's the thing. In James, it talks about how our faith without deeds is dead. It's not on life support. It's not just barely breathing. It's dead. Dead. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. And this is a tangible thing that we can do. This is a tangible deed that we can do. It's help people who don't have food. It seems so simple, but it's so complicated at the same time. Writing this was a huge wake-up call for me that I need to do more. I pray it has been for you too. Amen.